Imagine a world where sound could disappear the moment it was born. Then, in a quiet room, a single machine captured the human voice for the first time, and nothing in history would ever sound the same again. One day, young Edison was engrossed in his experiments inside a moving train car he had converted into a laboratory. The train journey was often a rocky one, tilting left and right and jolting up and down. As the train raced downhill, it shook violently, causing a row of chemical bottles on a wooden shelf to tumble to the floor, shattering into pieces. "Oh, danger," Edison cried out. From a broken jar of phosphorus, white smoke and eerie blue flames instantly erupted from the floorboards. In moments, the entire train car was filled with smoke and fire. "Oh no, fire," he yelled. He quickly took off his coat and tried to beat out the flames, but his coat caught fire too. Fortunately, Alexander Stevenson, the conductor, rushed in and doused the area with several buckets of water. Fire was finally extinguished, but the car was left reeking of phosphorus and filled with ash. "You're trash," Stevenson shouted, and in a fit of rage, he raised his hand and slapped Edison hard across the cheek. Edison cried out, "Ouch!" and quickly covered his ears with both hands. "Look at the mess these useless experiments have caused. A dangerous troublemaker like you isn't allowed on this train anymore. Get lost." All the experimental equipment the boy had so diligently collected was unceremoniously thrown out of the train window by the furious conductor. The train laboratory, which had been his pride and joy, was now completely destroyed. Edison was left alone, his head bowed in despair, watching as the train sped away into the distance. This was one of the most significant accidents Edison would suffer in his entire life. The damaged chemicals and machinery could eventually be replaced, but the greatest loss was something no amount of money could buy: his hearing. The blow from the enraged conductor was so severe that it ruptured his eardrum. From that day forward, Edison's hearing was severely impaired. However, Edison once optimistically remarked, "My ears are deaf, but they are very useful." While working at the telegraph department, he found that his deafness allowed him to hear only the distinct clicks of the telegraph machine. Unlike his colleagues who were distracted by background noise, he realized that no matter how noisy the street was, he could concentrate on his work as if he were in a quiet village. Edison's hearing loss, while causing him many difficulties, also became a powerful motivation for him to research and invent. He constantly struggled with the task of listening to telegraph messages while simultaneously writing them down, a process that was incredibly time-consuming. Furthermore, his poor hearing meant he often couldn't distinguish many signals clearly. He wished he could listen to them again, and the thought constantly crossed his mind, "If only I could record the sound, how wonderful that would be." Later, when he was back working at his research institute, an idea sparked. One night while testing telegraph signals, Edison was humming softly as he adjusted the needle of a recording device. Suddenly, he felt a faint vibration on his fingertip, as if something was touching it. "Strange," he muttered to himself. That tiny, almost unnoticeable vibration ignited a monumental question in his mind. If the telephone could transmit the human voice instantly, could a machine be built that could record that voice, which was a concept that aimed to preserve time, preserve memories, and preserve the human voice itself, something no one had dared to imagine before. The idea burned within him so fiercely that he began to skip meals and lose sleep, dedicating all his energy to sketching designs and conducting experiments. Near the Research Institute in Menlo Park stood a flat-roofed brick building that housed the machine shop. It was equipped with all manner of industrial tools, including lathes, drills, and grinding tables. At that time, this shop was capable of manufacturing nearly any machine that existed in America. The factory manager was a man named John Crucy, a highly talented machinist from Switzerland. No matter how difficult or unusual the task Edison assigned him, Crucy always managed to complete it. The following morning, Edison walked over to the factory and handed an odd-looking drawing to Crucy. "Please help me make this machine," he said. "Well, this is a weird-looking machine," Crucy commented, studying the blueprint. "Yes, it is. How many days will it take?" Edison asked. "I've never built anything like it, so it's hard to say. I just know I will work on it non-stop until it's finished," Crucy replied. Crucy and Edison were alike in their tireless work ethic. He took the blueprints and immediately set to work. After 30 hours of continuous labor in the workshop, he brought the finished device to the research lab. "It's done, Director," Cruci announced. "What is it?" Edison glanced at the contraption with a humorous look in his eye and said, "This machine. I will speak into it, and it will repeat what I say, just like a parrot. I call it a phonograph, a voice recorder. That can't be possible," Cruci exclaimed in disbelief. "You don't believe it? I think it's possible," Edison replied with a serious tone. Charles Batchelor, another one of the workshop men standing nearby, burst out laughing. "Hey, Mr. Cruci, the boss is joking with us again? I don't believe in such strange things." "You don't believe it?" Edison challenged. "I don't believe it. If it's true, I'll bet you a cigar," Batchelor declared. "Okay, prepare to listen," Edison said, accepting the wager. This was the historic moment. The machine was about to speak for the first time. Edison carefully wrapped a sheet of tinfoil around the machine's central cylinder. He turned the crank to get it moving and, leaning close to the horn, recited the first line of a nursery rhyme. "Mary had a little lamb." Everyone in the room chuckled at his seemingly eccentric behavior. But then, Edison adjusted the needle and turned the crank again. And from the machine came a faint hoarse and trembling sound, but it was undeniably his voice. "Mary had a little lamb." The room fell silent. No one dared to breathe. Cruci's face turned pale with astonishment. Batcha, with trembling hands, handed Edison the cigar. I lost," he stammered. Those who witnessed that moment understood that they were standing before a turning point that history would forever remember. That day, Edison and his colleagues studied and refined the machine all evening until they were completely satisfied. Early the next morning, he took a small package with him to New York. His first stop was the editorial office of the magazine Asterisk, Scientific American Asterisk. "Hello? Oh, what is that?" the editor asked, pointing to the package. "You wait a moment and you will know," Edison replied, placing the small, strangely shaped machine on the table. It had a long shaft, with a heavy flywheel at one end and a crank at the other. The editor-in-chief turned the crank, and a sound emerged from the device. "Hello. How do you like this recorder?" "No complaints. This is the sound of a human voice," the editor exclaimed, utterly amazed. Edison just smiled, using his newly invented phonograph to speak for him. Was Edison's clever way of playfully teasing others. Edison brings a talking machine. The news spread like wildfire throughout the editorial office, and soon, the editor-in-chief's desk was surrounded by a crowd of curious people. Before long, reporters from various newspapers and magazines had gathered. Edison demonstrated the machine for 2 or 3 hours, but the crowd grew so large that the floor began to creak under the weight, and the editor-in-chief had no choice but to ask the inventor to stop the demonstration. "A great invention, a milestone of the age," the machine seemed to say. The next day, every newspaper carried the story, detailing the marvel of this wonderful machine. While no one fully understood how it worked, its sheer wonder had captivated the public's curiosity. As a result, the train schedule from New York to Menlo Park had to be specially revised. Every train was packed with thousands of people, all jostling to get a glimpse of the Edison Research Institute. The magician. That was the new epithet for Edison. The news spread like wildfire. He became known as the Wizard of Menlo Park. The First Lady invited him to the White House. He was scheduled to demonstrate the phonograph for 30 minutes, but the event was so popular with guests that he ended up performing for 3 hours. Some people remained skeptical, whispering there must be someone hiding inside the machine. Edison would just smile and reply, "If there is, that person must be very small." One day, a bishop came to visit the laboratory and was examining the phonograph with great curiosity. Edison said to him, "Why don't you try it?" The bishop approached the recording horn and began to speak, reciting a long list of names from the Bible. After he finished, Edison turned the crank, and the phonograph played back every single name at the exact same speed the bishop had spoken them. News of this talking machine traveled across the Atlantic, all the way to Germany, where it captivated a young king. He declared, "The first experiment in our country must be conducted before us." So, a representative from the Edison Institute arrived with the phonograph. The king, fascinated, examined every part of the strange device. "Bring it back tonight," he commanded. That evening, the royal living room was packed with nobles, ladies, and guests. The king himself stood by the phonograph, ready to record his own voice. The room buzzed with excitement as the principles of sound waves and vibrations were explained. Edison, though an ocean away, was hailed as a genius engineer. Back in his lab, this world-changing invention was also a toy. And the biggest prankster of all was Edison himself. One night a friend came to stay over. As he settled into his bedroom, a strange, disembodied voice echoed from the corner. "It is now 11 o'clock. You have 1 hour left," the guest, startled, looked around, but saw nothing unusual. He tried to sleep, but the words echoed in his mind. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock. What would happen in an hour? He tossed and turned, wide awake. Finally, the clock struck midnight. Suddenly, the same terrifying voice boomed. 12 o'clock. Prepare to die. Prepare to die. The poor man leaped out of bed, threw open the door, and ran out screaming into the hallway. And who did he find there? Thomas Edison, laughing so hard he could barely stand. On December 19, 1878, Edison officially received his patent for the phonograph. What makes this even more incredible is that Edison was partially deaf. This invention wasn't just a machine. It was the dawn of a new era. For the first time, singers wouldn't vanish when they passed away. Life's fleeting moments could be captured and replayed. History, music, laughter, tears, all of it could now become immortal. While others went on to improve the phonograph, Edison turned his focus to the electric light. But the world had been forever changed. Fast forward more than 140 years to today. We live in a world where every single one of us carries a miniature recording studio in our pocket. Think about it. The single tap, you can record your voice, send a message, save a thought, or preserve a precious memory. We do it so often, we barely even think about it. But it's worth remembering that all of this started from a single, audacious moment. A moment when a young inventor leaned into a strange contraption and sang a simple nursery rhyme. As Mary had a little lamb. He dared to believe that the human voice deserved to be preserved. So today, every time you hit that record button, whether it's for a quick note, a heartfelt message, or a story for your kids, you're carrying on Edison's legacy. You are recording, you are saving, and you are making a small piece of life immortal. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more.